Hi there, I'm Heath Drusen, host of the Extremely American podcast. Do you have questions about extremist movements? Join me on August 13th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Boise State's Osher Institute for an Ask Me Anything about extremism in Idaho and across America. This event supports Season 3 of Extremely American with a suggested donation of $10. You'll get your questions answered while directly supporting this vital reporting. Hope to see you there.
Over the past few weeks, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality has been sending out air quality alerts for much of southern Idaho. Now, these air quality advisories reflect the smoky skies, and they do give us an indicator of just how bad our air quality has been thanks to wildfires burning in Oregon and Washington. Now, this week, in places like Boise, as well as Canyon, Gem, and Payette counties, we've reached the red or unhealthy level of air quality. Now, by definition, that means that some people may experience health effects and that members of sensitive groups may experience more serious health effects. So, what does that actually mean? Well, Dr. Ethan Sims is an emergency room physician and executive director of Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health. And for him, it means more patients are coming into the ER. They're coughing and they're struggling to breathe. And some of those patients, they're babies and children. Sims sat down with our George Prentice to talk about the human cost of all of this smoke. So let's take a listen.
What are you and your colleagues seeing? What kind of cases are walking through the doors?
I think everyone thinks when the smoke is bad like it is now that we're just going to be inundated with asthma and emphysema exacerbations. But I think the reality is we see a lot of lower level symptoms that are pretty vague, that are hard to pin exactly on smoke or heat. But we see a lot of people these past couple of days that have been coming in with headaches, fatigue, generalized weakness, feeling short of breath, having a sore throat, itchy, watery, runny eyes. I mean, I think you can hear it in my voice, which is already a little croaky to begin with, that it's making my voice raspy and difficult to talk. But we are also seeing, especially in those vulnerable populations like the very young and the very old or people with underlying lung disease, that we're seeing more exacerbations of difficulty breathing. And I want to tell a story about a patient I had yesterday that was a 7-week-old who has been coughing and struggling to breathe for about 2 weeks, had been seen by their pediatrician several times, had kind of every test under the sun with no answer about an infection, sent to the hospital because there were concerns that maybe this was a heart problem. We did a bunch of cardiac testing that all looked normal. And so, what does that leave us with as the cause of this kid's breathing difficulty that required him to be hospitalized? I think the answer is in the air. And I think the smoke was probably the reason that we're hospitalizing a 7-week-old because he can't breathe. And I'll take it even further into the rest of our world, the things we care about. I have a dog that loves to sit outside all day, every day. And my dog that does that now just has these goopy, red, irritated eyes that are because of the smoke.
Smoke travels through the body, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the things you're breathing in that cause this inflammatory process are these miniature particles called PM 2.5 that are made up of the fine particulate that sort of is released when trees burn or homes burn or whatever is in the smoke comes into you, and you breathe it into your lungs, and it can cause direct irritation, inflammation in your lungs, but then it can cross into your bloodstream and get deposited in any of your organs. We know that it can cross the placenta, so pregnant patients are at risk of having this impact their unborn fetus. We know it can cross the blood-brain barrier, so it can cause long-term neurologic problems like dementia, which we see higher rates of in people that are exposed to repeated wildfire smokes.
Yeah.
So it really is something that starts in your nose, mouth, and lungs, but then can go anywhere.
The smoke will clear, but then it will come back again. And then there's the heat, and then there's something else. And I guess my point here is that this needs to be a year-round conversation, yes?
Absolutely. I think people get overwhelmed by the idea that the planet is changing in a way that is unsafe for humans to continue to habitate. But I think by talking about this and kind of depoliticizing and taking some of the stigma and fear out of that conversation, we can really work more proactively together to address these underlying issues that are driving climate change. It's very rare that more than 90% of any group agrees on anything. And we have more than 99% of scientists saying that climate change is due to human activities, especially the combustion of fossil fuels. And it's not like we don't have technology already around that can help us transition away from that process to something like solar that is cleaner, cheaper, and also nicer to use. I mean, instead of having these big toxic plumes from, coal factories or these big fossil fuel plants in California that are on the threat of exploding, you have solar that is clean and renewable and can't replace everything we've got, but it replaces a lot of what we got. In fact, California has already been able to replace all of their electricity with solar for several days over this summer.
I'm thinking a lot about kids lately. In a few weeks, kids are back in school. That means recess, sports, things as simple as standing outside waiting for the bus. This is not good for kids, these conditions.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the younger folks are in the higher vulnerable population category.
Yeah.
And we also know that, outdoor camps are what make Idaho summer special. We know that sports are a big part of what keeps kids engaged in school.
You've got kids. Have they been impacted at all yet?
Absolutely. Cross-country practices have already been canceled or moved into a treadmill. So, my daughter who's on the cross-country team, instead of running in the hills of Boise, which is what really makes her enjoy the sport, is running on the treadmill in our gym, staring at the wall.
But kids of all ages.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's opportunity for us to have conversations again at the kitchen table.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, I think it's just, say what you're seeing. So you're seeing the smoke out there. What's causing it? It's probably because it's been the hottest year on record 11 years in a row. And that's got a lot to do with it. So, we're not asking you to support some political position. This is really just about human health and how we make the world around us a better place and the people that live in our communities healthier.
You just announced the Fall Symposium on Climate and Health. So tell us about that.
So this is a great partnership between Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health and the two largest healthcare systems in Idaho. So last year it was hosted at St. Alphonsus, this year at St. Luke's. So you see all the big medical communities in the state are talking about this as a medical problem. And on Wednesday, September 2nd, we're going to have 3 different series of discussions that look at the science behind what's happening, the health impacts of what's going on, and some community-based solutions from partners around the country that are looking at extreme heat, wildfire smoke and air quality, and severe drought.
The general public is invited.
Absolutely. This is going to be something that's going to have some medical discussion and some talk about sort of how the healthcare community can respond to this. But it is going to be very approachable for the general public. It's going to be at St. Luke's Plaza, 8 to 4:30. There's a registration site up on the St. Luke's website and an Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health website. And, I would greatly encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about how this is impacting you and those you love to come out and check it out.
And that was our George Prentice speaking with Dr. Ethan Sims. He's an emergency room physician and executive director of Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health, talking about the effects of wildfire smoke that's been blanketing Idaho. You've been listening to the Idaho Matters podcast from Boise State Public Radio. To stay in touch, you can find quick Idaho daily news every morning when you subscribe to the Connector podcast. If this podcast has become a part of your routine, can you tap 5 stars and leave us a review? It helps us stand out.
The fatal shooting of a teenager at a protest in Seattle has gone unsolved for 6 years.
This is open in your face. How are there no answers?
Our investigation has uncovered new evidence and witnesses who say they've never talked to police.
Did police ever call you? Not once.
Listen to We Keep Us Safe, a new true crime series on the Embedded podcast from NPR.